Our next speaker is Keith Krach, a very distinguished business leader, innovator, philanthropist, and public servant, who currently serves as the chairman of the Krach Institute for Tech Diplomacy at Purdue and the U.S.-Taiwan Business Council. Keith was just awarded the highest manufacturing industry honor, the 2025 Eugene Merchant Manufacturing Medal, for making a $4.5 trillion impact on global productivity. He has previously served as the Undersecretary of State and brokered the onshoring at TSMC here to Arizona. Prior to his government service, Keith was the chairman and CEO of DocuSign, and we are honored to have Keith join us today. His presentation is titled, American Chip Revival and the Trusted Tech Imperative. Please join me in welcoming Keith to the stage.
Well, good morning, everyone. You know, sometimes I feel like my life's been just one Forrest Gump story. I started as a welder in my dad's 5-person machine shop, small machine shop in Ohio at the age of 12, a kid with a blowtorch and a dream. He taught me that hard work, honesty, and a firm handshake could build anything, including trust. You know, after a hot summer day in the factory, he would slap my back and go, Keith, we can't solve world peace, but we can try. His dream was that I'd go off to college and get some college knowledge, be an engineer, and come back to the shop and build in a big company, maybe 10 people. Well, the road took a few turns. I somehow became the youngest VP in General Motors history, and then did what everyone thought was crazy. I quit. I left that plush office in Detroit for a folding chair in Silicon Valley. We built a company called RASNA, invented mechanical design synthesis, and we sold it, ended up being for $500 million. We built Ariba, invented B2B e-commerce, took that to $40 billion, then turned DocuSign into a verb and proved that digital trust moves faster than paper. So we were approaching 1 billion users at DocuSign. I went on a scouting mission to China. I've been going there since 1981, but this time it was different. Years earlier, the CCP, through Alibaba, stole a pile of intellectual property from Ariba. And now what I saw was that she was turning techno-competition into a new form of techno-aggression. So flying home, I'm thinking, you know, the guys with the best technology win the war. I wonder if the guys in Washington know about this. So I made it my mission to find out. A week later, next thing you know, I'm asked, have you ever thought about serving your country? I had no other response than to say, well, that's a dream I never knew I had. I'd be honored. And then they said, can you move? And then just to sound macho, I said, I can move anywhere in the world. So this Ohio boy, who began his journey welding parts and later had the good fortune of welding together billion-dollar companies, but even this dreamer could have never imagined that one day he'd be asked to weld together America's alliances as Undersecretary of State, running U.S. economic diplomacy and giving back to this great nation that has given so much to him and his family. Well, they handed me 3 thick binders in prep for my Senate confirmation meeting. 1 for every country, 1 for every industry, and 1 for every major initiative. They said, study these. I said, not a problem. I went to Catholic school. I can commit it to memory. A few weeks later, I was sitting in the Senate confirmation hearing saying, our rivals are playing the long game, and they're playing for keeps. A game of 4-dimensional military, economic, cultural, and diplomatic chess with very little respect for rule of law, intellectual property, sovereignty of nations, and human rights. And superpower advantage can vanish in an instant. And there's no substitute for American leadership. Well, somehow, I was unanimously confirmed. Now, the legislative affairs person told me later that I had a strategic advantage. So I said, yeah, I had a strategic advantage. What is it? And she said, well, nobody knows who you are. And I knew that would come in handy someday. So Thursday confirmed, Friday sworn in, Saturday on a plane to Bahrain, then to Osaka for the G20. Then the president decides he wants to go to North Korea. 3 continents, 36 hours, 0 sleep. We refuel in Alaska. I grab a stale donut in a tiny visitor center and left my classified phone behind. Not good. By Monday, I got the charge. My charge was to develop and operationalize global economic security strategy to drive economic growth, maximize national security, and combat China's economic aggression. I'm thinking, holy crap. My CEO instincts kick in, and I know I need a high-performance team. Now, everybody warned me that if you want a friend in Washington, get a dog. I already had one. So instead, I called a dozen of my battle-scarred Silicon Valley veteran friends, people who've been through fires of innovation, and said, it's time to pay back our country. They came. The first thing I did was meet one-on-one with my foreign colleagues. So economic ministers, finance ministers, some prime ministers, foreign ministers. And during the conversations, I'd inevitably say, how's your relationship with China? They go, well, China's an important trading partner. And that seemed like every time they looked both ways like somebody was in the room. And then they whisper, but we don't trust them. And that's when bells went off in my head. Because for the last 10 years, I've been standing up in front of our employees at DocuSign, our customers at DocuSign, and saying, we're not in the software business. We're in the trust business. We deal with people's most important documents. Those are the ones that you sign. And trust is the most important word in any language. You buy from people you trust, you partner with people you trust, you do business with people you trust, you love people you trust. And that was the aha moment we came up with the trust doctrine. And I realized the same rule applies to nations, countries, trade, invest, and ally only with those who they trust. And that was that light bulb moment for what became known as the trust doctrine. So one of our most urgent missions was to stop the authoritarian regime from seizing control of global 5G. If you remember back in 2020, their momentum looked unstoppable. And if Beijing succeeded, 5G just wouldn't carry data. It'd give them reach into everything. Power grids, ports, cars, even hospitals. All previous United States efforts had failed. Both sides of the aisle were hitting the alarm button. If we didn't act fast, Huawei would own by default. So we needed a bold opening move, an opening gambit, because they had all the momentum. We needed to take that momentum away from them. And that's what the press called the 5G trifecta. That was comprised of 3 prongs. The first prong was to cut off Huawei's chips. So we tightened export controls and used our edge in design and machine tools to cut off Huawei's access into advanced semiconductors, making it clear that their supply chain was living on borrowed time. So prong 2 was to secure the semiconductor supply chain. So when we looked around in 2020, there was not one company in the world that was going to build manufacturing facilities, semiconductor manufacturing facilities in the United States. And I know, we talked to all the CEOs. And so when we looked at that, we knew, hey, look, this just isn't an economic issue. It's a national security emergency. So our strategy was laser focused. Go for the biggest of them all, TSMC. And the goal wasn't just to land a factory. It was to ignite a chain reaction that would rebuild America's trusted semiconductor supply chain. So I called the chairman, Mark Liu, and I said, we need you to build in America. You'll be close to your customers, your suppliers, and the world's largest market, and we'll make it worth your while. Well, 2 weeks later, our team at TSMC reached a $12 billion agreement, and to be the largest onshoring in history at that point. And that trust triggered a chain reaction that changed everything. Suppliers followed, other industry leaders followed, reinvested, and universities like Purdue stepped up to close the talent gap by launching America's first master's degree program in semiconductor engineering. Everyone got the best part of the deal. TSMC gained proximity to customers like Apple, NVIDIA, and AMD. America gained thousands of high-paying jobs, a revitalized manufacturing base, and a stronger domestic chip ecosystem. And the free world gained a secure, trusted semiconductor supply chain, the lifeblood of freedom itself. And then President Trump took that momentum and scaled it into something historic, a $165 billion commitment, 6 fabs, 2 advanced packaging facilities, and a major R&D center. It became the largest foreign direct investment in U.S. history, the spark that ignited a semiconductor renaissance. And as you know, today, with 130 new projects across 28 states and over 500,000 jobs in motion, the United States, once again, leads the world in the technology that underpins freedom itself. So prong 3 was the Clean Network. And this is a coalition of trusted partners committed to keeping authoritarian vendors out of 5G systems. It was the trust doctrine's first real-world test. Every member, nation, telecom, and company had to operate by a clear set of trust principles. Things like integrity, transparency, reciprocity, respect for human rights, respect for rule of law, respect for property, respect for national sovereignty. Those values form the foundation of trust. These are principles that we honor in the free world, but authoritarian regimes do not. As a matter of fact, they typically use that against us for their strategic advantage. So what we did in one jujitsu move is we turned the tables on them. We weaponized the very principles that protect our freedom. And in less than a year, the Clean Network had 60 countries representing 2/3 of the world's global GDP, 200 telcos, and dozens of industry-leading companies, many of them are here, joining that cause. It became the largest alliance of democracies in modern history. And the first time nations ever coordinated global technology policy at scale without firing a single shot. And in the process, we created a new transformational model, a model based on trust that integrates Silicon Valley strategies with traditional foreign policy tools, which is now known as tech diplomacy. As General H.R. McMaster put it, the Clean Network's defeat of the CCP's 5G master plan was the first time a U.S.-led initiative proved that China's economic warfare is beatable because it exposed their biggest weakness. Nobody trusts them. And I think, frankly, the only thing that scares the shit out of Xi more than a united United States is a united set of allies. As a result, the CCP declared me an enemy of the state and sanctioned my entire family, not for what I said, but for what our team achieved. But I can tell you one thing, this small-town kid from Ohio who had been blessed with the American dream will not bend a knee to Emperor Xi. Because this wasn't just a victory for 5G. It was a blueprint for how to win the future. That insight became the foundation of the trust doctrine. After my term ended, we continued the mission by launching the Krach Institute for Tech Diplomacy at Purdue, which has now rapidly become the world's preeminent institution for advancing freedom through trusted technology. Our mission is simple: accelerate the development and adoption of trusted technology into every critical and emerging field, from 5G to semiconductors to AI. So to turn these principles into practice, we took the concept behind the Clean Network and expanded it into the global Trusted Tech Standard, or XGTT. The XGTT it's a practical benchmark that measures the trustworthiness of technologies and how they're designed, how they're developed, and how they're governed, and how they're deployed. It reduces friction, accelerates innovation, and enables seamless collaboration amongst trusted partners. And I think that's why SEMICON's theme, Stronger Together, shaping a sustainable future on talent, technology, and trade couldn't be more fitting. Talent gives us the hands. Technology gives us the tools. Trade gives us the reach. But trust gives us the strength to hold it all together. Because without trust, talent leaves. Without trust, technology divides. And without trust, trade collapses. Because trust isn't just a moral value. It's the ultimate competitive advantage. And for the first time, the free world now has its own playbook, one that proves trust is stronger than fear. So before I close, I want to leave you with words of one of America's great transformational leaders, one of my mentors, Secretary George Shultz. And this is just a month before he passed, at the age of 100. Here's what he wrote. December 13th marks my turning 100 years young. I've learned much over that time, but looking back, I'm struck that there's one lesson I learned early and then learned over and over again. Trust is the coin of the realm. When trust was in the room, whatever room that was, the family room, the school room, the locker room, the office room, the government room, or the military room, good things happen. When trust was not in the room, good things did not happen. Everything else is just details. And I can feel a lot of trust at this conference. When I look around the room, you engineers, the builders, the innovators have more influence over the future of freedom than any generation in history. So when you go back to your teams, your labs, your fabs, remember this: innovation. It's not just about innovation, it's about freedom. And I think that's what it's all about. Because every chip you design, every system you create, carries something far greater than code. It carries the power to defend free thought, to expand opportunity, and to keep the human spirit free. Integrity isn't inherited, it's earned one choice at a time. And the same values that built this nation, hard work, honesty, respect, and fair play, are the values that will build the next era of trusted technology. Freedom isn't guaranteed. Ben Franklin said, democracy is great if you can keep it. It's a decision we renew every generation, every day, every moment. We choose trust over fear. Freedom, like a chip, must be engineered, protected, and renewed. Because every innovation built on trust, in the end, is a victory for freedom itself. We've done it before. We'll do it again. And just like that kid from Ohio with a blowtorch and a dream, we'll keep building. And not just technology, but the architecture of trust. So, thank you for what you build. Thank you for what you believe. And thank you for what you do every day to keep the human spirit free. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.